Shutout podcast where we discuss all things NFL, college football. But as we're in the week of the 2025 NFL draft, we've got a bit of a special episode for you all coming a little bit earlier this week. I'm one of your hosts, Joe, and I'm here with Kyle.
Hello.
And Joe Lockwood.
Hello.
And today, as you might have seen, last week we kind of did a what we would do mock draft. And we took it in turns and we discussed all the picks. However, just so happens that the three of us are going to be together for the actual draft. So we decided to make a little bit of a game about it. So we've all done mock drafts, predictive mock drafts before this. We've brought them to the table. We've not seen each other's yet, and we're going to discuss them. We're going to justify some of the picks. We're going to argue with some of the picks, I'm sure. We even got some trades in there. But yeah, because it's a competition and we're scoring this, Kyle, I'm going to throw it over to you to explain the scoring system just a little.
Yeah, so scoring system for our competition. If you get a player, a team, a pick bang on, you'll get a full 10 points for that. So you get 5 points for a player to a team and 5 points for a player to a pick. So if we talk about the presumptive number one overall pick, Cam Ward, if we all put Cam Ward at first overall to the Titans, we'd get 5 points for Ward to the Titans and 5 points for Ward at 1. Say if there's a trade and Cleveland goes up to 1 to take him instead, we'd still get 5 points for Cam Ward at 1, but we wouldn't get the 5 points for the team because it's a different team. If you get the correct position, but it's the wrong player, so say for example, Shedeur Sanders goes first overall, you then get 2 points because you've got the position of need, but you've got the wrong player. And then you can also try and guess trades as well. If you guess one of the two teams trading, so say you go, the Titans are going to trade 1, you'd get 2 points if they do. And if you correctly identify the other team trading, you'd also get another 2 points for that. And then a bonus for getting both to make it 5 points. And the tiebreakers is going to be whoever has the most correct picks to start the draft. And then if it's still a tiebreaker after that, we're all going to guess who does the biggest celebration on stage, and that'll be the final tiebreaker. So after a bit of a discussion off camera, we've quickly realised that the presumptive first, second and third overall picks are going to be, well, we've all picked the same players. We've gone for the bookies' favourites in them. We've gone for Cam Ward to the Titans, Travis Hunter to the Browns, and Abdul Carter to the New York Giants at 3. We all think that's sort of relatively set in stone at this point. There's not likely to be any sort of change with that. Everything the teams have done sort of make it feel quite obvious.
I will say with the Giants, there is a point of contention. The Giants are a team that could change it, but with kind of the bookies odds, you've kind of got to go for it, especially if you're doing predictive.
Yeah, all signs point that way.
Yeah. So we've all sort of settled on thinking that the draft starts at pick 4. So why don't we go over to Lockwood and you can take it away and talk us through your first round.
Yeah, so I'll go through it in batches. So I'll start from pick 4, go through to 10 with the Bears. So at number 4 to the Patriots, I've gone for Will Campbell. Number 5 to the Jags, I've gone for Tyler Warren. Number 6 to the Raiders, I've gone for Ashton Genty. For number 7 to the Jets, I've gone Ahmed Membu. Number 8 to the Panthers, I've gone Mason Graham. Number 9 to the Saints, I've gone Shedeur Sanders. And number 10 to the Bears, I've gone Michael Williams. So, yeah, I'll open it up to you guys. What are you guys thinking?
Kyle, I'm going to let you go first.
We'll work. There's nothing that screams it's not going to happen in there. There's nothing that I majorly hate. Pick 4 feels like the most likely at this point. I think, Patriots, we'll let Joe Smith talk about this later on, no doubt. Patriots, they need an offensive lineman. You've got a good rookie QB from last year. You can't let him keep getting hit. You've got to give him as much protection as possible. Tyler Warren to the Jags feels like sort of best offensive BPA. We've mentioned it in a couple of other episodes. It feels like the Jags can't really go wrong. They've got so many needs at so many different places that any pick's a good pick. Genti to the
I
Raiders.
felt with Engram leaving as well. I thought that they have a hole at
They
tight
do.
end. Yeah.
I will say, Brenton Strange is former second, third round pick. So it's not like he's an undrafted free agent that they brought in behind him, which we'll discuss more kind of on the Jags as we go through it. But I don't hate the Tyler Warren pick. Do I think tight ends may have been inflated a little bit this year because we've seen Brock Bowers do as well as he has? Maybe. Maybe I don't think that they deserve to go in the top 10. But
whether they deserve to and whether they will, it's a completely different thing.
Yes, it is a different thing. But for me, it's a bit rich at 5 for a tight end. I just want to jump in quickly. Kyle, Mason Graham to the Panthers. I don't hate it for you guys, but everything you've done in the off-season, you beefed up your interior D-line.
I don't hate it. Like, if you'd have asked me 2 months ago, I'd have bit your hand off. He was the player I wanted.
Yeah.
Not including the ones I didn't think were going to make it to 8. Very much wanted Mason Graham on the Panthers. Then free agency happened. I think the positions we did and didn't address, we signed 2 defensive tackles in free agency. We've got Derek Brown coming back from injury. Ashawn Robinson had a good year last year. We were on a 3-4 and we've got 4 good defensive tackles now. I think going defensive tackle at 8 feels, unless our front office is so in love with him that they think he's going to be the best D lineman in the league, I think Mason Graham at 8, that ship sailed.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just a case of defensive best player available. Like, he is the best defensive
Which is
player
fair
at
enough.
that pick. So, yeah, I thought, to beef up a poor run defense last year, I think go for the best defense, the front 7 defensive player that was left available.
Shadir at 9. Shadir at 9. It's going to happen, Joe.
It is going to happen. I don't want it to, and that was very much a pick with my head, not my heart.
And then I think, not necessarily a shock, I think the biggest thing you've done in your top 10 that I think is going to be a talking point is your Bears pick, Michael Williams to the Bears at 10. I don't disagree with it per se. I think it could be a good fit for them. He's a good player. It's whether it's going to translate to the league, and is that the best thing the Bears could have done? If you look at what they've done everywhere else, they've really tried to make it work for Caleb Williams on offense. I don't know whether taking another defender here when they could use a third wide receiver, they could possibly use a tight end, they could possibly use a running back, really steer the ship fully into Caleb Williams getting that high-powered monster offense going.
I think given the fact that they've got the 2 second-round picks, I think they've got that insurance policy. I think basically the Michael pick came from Genti didn't fall to him. There was a couple of picks they could have gone offensive wise, but I didn't fancy any of them at that point. I just think for me, and knowing Dennis Allen, how I know Dennis Allen, that Michael Williams is his type of edge rusher.
I think you're reading too much into the fact that Dennis Allen's in the building. I really think you're reading way too much into that. Michael, in terms of the prospect of that player, he's a developmental guy.
Yeah, 100%.
He's very much that. You're relying on his physical traits.
He's a traits
You're
guy.
hoping that the injuries that he apparently went through last year at Georgia are done, which I imagine they are. But you're hoping that the lack of production is due to those injuries. Now, Georgia players, as much as they tend to translate well to the league, quite a few of them, some of them don't necessarily come in with the biggest amount of stats. But ultimately, I think if you're picking Michael here, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think, if anything, Chicago, what they need is a player with a little bit more speed to power. Can you really pick at 10 and say, this guy's developmental? He's not going to be great straight away, but he might be great 5 years down the line. I think if you're picking with a top 10 pick, you need to essentially say, we believe in this guy right now.
I think moving on from that, I'll go through my 11 to 19 from that. So I've gone for 11, Jade Barron to the 49ers. I've gone for at 12, Tessero McMillan to the Cowboys. Number 13, Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Dolphins. Number 14 to the Colts. I've gone for Mike Green to the Falcons at 15, Walter Nolan to the Cardinals at 16, Will Johnson to the Bengals at 17, Grace Abel to the Seahawks at 18, and Campbell to the Buccaneers at 19.
Boy, do I have things to say right here.
Oh, God, lay it on me.
49. I'll start off with kind of 11 to 15. Then Kyle, I'll let you kind of take kind of the back half of it whilst we kind of analyze it, and we can kind of jump in when we need to. Jade Barron, great player. Be really good in a Robert Saleh defense. If they don't address the trenches with that number 11 pick, they're in trouble. Their trenches are decimated. Realistically, as well, they could draft a receiver because
They could.
You know, you've got Ricky Pearsall, who you took at the back end of the first round last year, which was a shock last year. But you've traded away Debo. Now, you've got Juwan Jennings as well, who's a good player, but it's one of those where it's like, you could do it. They need the trenches. I think they need corner as well, but Pet to the Cowboys, I kind of like the fit. It's whether or not he is that receiver that they draft, and it's whether or not he, in terms of talent-wise, I don't think he should fall that far.
No, he shouldn't.
Completely honest.
And I think
but it seems that the league is lower on him than a lot of people kind of do in these scenarios are.
I think going into
100%.
the Cowboys is a safety blanket for him, though, because he's not going in as the number one guy. He's not going to be expected to be the guy producing. You know, he's got CD Lamb as his number one. He's going in as a number two.
I think he thrives being that number one. I think if
for me, it takes pressure off him from day one.
Well, it does take pressure off him, but ultimately, you're looking at a player who is a jump ball receiver. You're essentially saying, what you're saying right there is, because then CD Lamb's going to get all the attention, Tet's production should skyrocket. If anything, that's a little bit more pressure because he's expected to be that safety blanket kind of guy. Personally, I don't think you can call a true X-receiver a safety blanket.
The biggest issue there is you said that, there'll be no pressure on him. He's a top 12 pick going to the Dallas Cowboys. There will be pressure on him. It doesn't matter how bad the Cowboys are. There is pressure if you're a Cowboys player. It comes with a history of that franchise.
100%. And then I'll quickly just touch on the next two. Kelvin Banks Jr. for the Dolphins. Great pick.
Yeah.
They need to protect Tua, whether or not they will, because they don't tend to like going offensive line in the first round.
Sexy.
But it's what they need to do, and I think this will kind of show us how the Dolphins want to take their team for the next 5 years. And then finally, I'll just touch on Colston Loveland. Yep, Indy needs a tight end. They need that intermediate threat. Colston Loveland's the second best tight end in the draft. It's an obvious pick. Finally, Falcons, Mike Green. Mike Green is my edge number 2. Falcons need pass rush. Mike Green has that. Is it the right environment for him? I think if you pick him purely from player-wise, it's a no-brainer. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but I'll touch on that later.
Yeah, everything you've said about those sort of 5 players, I agree with most of it. Banks, Loveland, Green in particular, they all feel like fairly, not necessarily predictable picks, but they all feel like picks that everybody has been making or would agree with. If we start to take a look then at your next 5, Walter Nolan to the Cardinals, they need to keep improving their D-line, their box. It's a good fit. Again, they're another team rumoured to be in on Milton Williams, pass rushing defensive tackle. And then if you look at this draft from the first round prospects, Walter Nolan fits that mould pretty well. If you can't get Milton, I think that's a good fit there. Will Johnson to the Bengals. I mean, I don't
Bizarre.
hate it. He's gonna be good. It's gonna work for him there. I just don't know whether you're aware that the Bengals O-line
Their trenches are so terrible.
Oh, they are, and they need pass rush help. But I think, given the depth of both defensive tackle and defensive end this year, I think they can afford to take one of the best cornerbacks in the class, and a cornerback class that it does die out pretty quickly after the end of the start of the second round. It dies out quite quick. So take him while he's still there.
It's another skill player for the Bengals, though. This is the issue.
Yeah.
It is, but it is also seems to be the Bengals' MO.
It screams Bengals.
They seem to hate. Yeah.
It screams Bengals pick because it's the best player, not the one who'll do the best for the team.
Yeah.
And then your next two picks, can't fault them. Gray Zabel to the Seahawks. Seahawks need interior offensive line. Jahad Campbell to the Bucks. Bucks need another linebacker. As you know, as yourself, with being a Saints fan and myself being a Panthers fan, both your picks for the Falcons and the Bucks make me upset. I wouldn't want that to happen. They both feel like solid picks that I don't want them to do come Thursday.
Yeah, I think I'll round out my first round quickly then. So I've got Amarian Hampton to the Broncos at 20. I've got Jackson Dart to the Steelers at 21. I've got Kenneth Grant to the Chargers at 22. Jalen Walker to the Packers at 23. Malachi Starks to the Vikings at 24. Josh Connolly Jr. to the Texans at 25. Matthew Golden to the Rams at 26. Donovan Jackson to the Ravens at 27. Donovan Ezaraku to the Lions at 28. Tyler Booker to the Commanders at 29. James Pierce Jr. to the Bills at 30. Josh Simmons to the Kansas City Chiefs at 31. And Nick Skirton to the Eagles at 32. Howie does it again.
You've not, that's for sure. I've got a couple of things.
Go on.
We worked on every pick here. I'm just going to point out some ones a couple that I like, a couple that I dislike. Kenneth Grant to the Chargers at 22. Colson Loveland's off the board. They don't have that true X receiver on the board necessarily that's worth picking in the 22 range. I think Kenneth Grant's a good pick. You're boosting the defense there. The other one that I do like, it's got to be Donovan Ezaraku to the Lions at 28. I think he'd do very well for them. Ultimately, I think it's one of those where you kind of, to me at least, you've got to pick either end of the spectrum of Aiden Hutchinson. I'd say Aiden Hutchinson as a pass rusher is kind of right in the middle of what you want from an edge rusher. Unfortunately, I think Donovan Ezaraku is also kind of right in the middle of what you want from an edge rusher. He's not that true speed threat. He's not that true big-bodied 3-4 defensive end type of threat. So I like it. It's just how well will two of the exact same archetype edge rushers do in the same defensive line? A couple that I dislike. You've got the Vikings keeping their first-round pick. I know you're playing the long game.
No, I haven't. I didn't want to risk it with trades. I know
that's fine. You don't risk it, but
I will play it safe.
The Vikings have like 3 picks in this entire draft. Just pointing that out.
They do.
A couple that I dislike as well. Josh Conley. He's not going before Josh Simmons. He's just not. Whether you look at the injury or not, Josh Simmons has had private workouts now, I believe. If he's ready for private workouts, then he's pretty much going to be ready at least some point in the season. And you've got Donovan Jackson going to the Ravens. I don't hate it because they do need guard help.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mind it.
I personally am not giving Tyler Booker a first-round grade.
Neither am I.
There are better interior offensive line prospects available. Yeah, it's an interesting pick. I agree with most of what Joe said. The Jalen Walker pick to the Packers. Jalen Walker
such a Packers first round pick.
Jalen Walker is being seen by most of the league as a top 10 pick. Like, he's basically a lock as a top 10 pick, and you've got
Can I just say that
23. That feels brave.
Jalen Walker right now is like the second favourite to go to New England at 4.
He's another one though.
Jalen Walker as the third overall player in this draft.
Oh, yeah. I think he's a very good player. I think he's another traits guy. You are betting on traits with him, as opposed to production. It's the same as we touched on earlier. with Georgia
But
edge
you've got
rushers.
Michael, who's predicted to go at the back end of the first round at 10, but Jalen Walker, who's predicted to go top 10 at the back end of the first round.
Am I correct in seeing that you've not got Shamar Stewart anywhere on there?
He doesn't.
I don't know. The more I went on, the more I was doing the picks. The only one I could really see him going to was Philly at 32. I think Philly would jump at that, but I like Nick Skirton. I think he's one of them players that he didn't have the best year at Texas A&M. His stock fell a little bit, but he's going to go into the NFL. He's lost a ton of weight already. He was playing heavier than he's played his entire college career last year. He's finished his season. He's lost all his weight. I feel like he's set to explode. I feel like Philly just love taking advantage of players like that.
It's fair. It's fair. I mean, I personally don't think you're going to do very well. Your first 22 picks, I think you've got about 15 good picks in there that I wouldn't be surprised. Your last 10, respectfully,
it's
I
all
think
over
the
the
wheels
place.
fell off.
Did you get bored?
I'll take it. I was watching the Sheffield United game at the same time.
To be fair, I bet you wish you didn't do that now.
No, I don't. I wish I was paying attention.
There's some standout good choices in there. There's some standout questionable. Why the hell have you done that choices?
Highlight for me is the uber safe on the trade department.
Yeah.
First ever.
Yeah, see, that could end up biting you in the
first 32 picks. Go to
It
the
could
teams that
completely screw me, but I think it's one of them where I think some of them are wild bat swings.
So we'll take a look at what me and Joe can bring to the table to match that eclectic run of your final 10. If it's all right with you guys, I think I'm going to go next. Talked about how Lockwood has gone very safe with the trades. I've got 4 trades in my first round. But before we get to any of them, we'll talk about the first 10 picks as we did with Lockwood. So as you know, first 3 picks are the same. I've also gone for Will Campbell to the Patriots at 4. However, from there on in, it gets a little bit different. So at pick number 5 to the Jaguars, I've picked Jalen Walker. At 6 to the Raiders, Armand Membu. 7 to the Jets, Tyler Warren. 8, I have the San Francisco 49ers trading up with the Carolina Panthers, and they are taking Mason Graham. At 9, I agree, Shadur Sanders is a New Orleans Saint. And at 10, I've got Ashton Genty going to the Chicago Bears. Tell me what you think.
Love it.
Yeah.
I really do enjoy it.
I don't enjoy Sanders, but we all know my opinions on that. It's going to happen, but I don't think it should happen. But I think the one that really stands out for me is the Raiders taking Membu over Genty. I think for me, Membu is the best he's the best right tackle in this class, one of the best tackles in this class. And I think he just shows up that offensive line for you to take a running back in a deep running back class a bit later on. I do really like that pick.
The thing is, you could 100% go for a player like Quishon Judkins. Bear in mind, you've got Ohio State staff now in Vegas. You've then got one of the most solid lines in football. I don't know if you've seen there's some things going around about Colton Miller, whether they want to trade him away.
Well, that was part of my reasoning. Colton Miller's heading into his final season of his contract. Their right tackle from last year, DJ Glaze, played left tackle in college. So you can get Membu as plug-and-play right tackle. It gives Glaze a year to sit out if he needs to, or if they do decide to move on from Miller, you've got your left tackle ready to go. Part of the reason their run game was so bad last year was, yes, they didn't have a star running back, but the offensive line play was really bad. For me, it feels like putting Genty behind a bad line is not a good idea. Yes, he's going to get you extra yards, but if he's going to get you 5 yards after contact, surely you want to get him 3 yards past the line of scrimmage before he gets contact. If he's getting contact 100%. In the backfield, he's only actually getting you 2 yards of play. And as you both said, the depth of this running back class, get a better offensive line, and then go get one of these players in round 2 or 3 who are definitely going to be starter level running backs.
I think the only flag for me about it is, and I know I picked Genty at 6, but you look at the Raiders DB room, and it is sparse to say the least. I think they need to look DB quite early on in this class as well. So I think it might be a case of waiting until round 3 at least for a running back, but it's not like they're not there for them.
I really like the Jalen Walker to the Jags pick. I can see it happening. There has been some talk about it. I will say at that point, are you dropping one of your edges?
See, at that pick, I've chosen that specific player to that team because the new defensive coordinator, he's coming in. He says he wants to run a multiple scheme. He wants 3-4. He wants 4-3.
Okay.
He wants lots of different looks. And he says you've got to have guys who take pride in not getting blocked. And the most important thing for him is players who are going to rally to the ball. That just sums up Jalen Walker. I feel like you've got the potential to play him at edge, and you can play him at linebacker there. You can move him around. He'll be able to do lots of different things in that Jags defense.
And then obviously you've got your trade in there. Panthers trading back, 49ers trading forward for Mason Graham. It's a good pick. As I said, kind of when we were discussing Joe's, the 49ers need to bulk up the trenches. And why not get the best defensive trench player that there is in this draft? You're really helping out that run defense then. And it means that when you take care of one of the trenches in round 1, in round 2, you can then look to try and help the other. Yeah. Obviously, they're lacking some skill position players as well. But it's very clear they've gone hard rebuild with the amount of players that they got rid of in the offseason. And you rebuild from the trenches if you are a good team.
And Panthers GM Dan Morgan has made it abundantly clear the team is looking to move back if there isn't a player on the board that they're in love with.
100%. And Gentry to the Bears at 10. He's just going to be stupid good in the offense. That's enough said about that.
The Bears winning the offseason again.
Shot. Coming fourth in their division.
Talking of the
next
Panthers
up, Kyle.
trading back to 11, their pick, everybody knows they need to address the edge position. The way the Panthers typically pick is rounds 1, they pick a guy who's got high production at college, and then 2 through 7, they tend to go for guys who score high in the RAS scale and who are athletic freaks. So if you need an edge who's productive in round 1, that's Donovan Ezeraku. So for me, he's a Panther at pick 11. Pick 12, I agree, Cowboys going receiver. I've gone for Matthew Golden. 13, Will Johnson to the Dolphins. 14, the Colts, I've got taking Gray Zabel. 15, Michael Williams to the Falcons. Tetairoa McMillan is now an Arizona Cardinal. Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Bengals. Jahdae Barron to the Seahawks. And Jahad Campbell to the Buccaneers.
Joe, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, I think obviously we were talking a lot about the Cowboys pick earlier on. I think Golden, he is a good receiver. Obviously, I've got him going in the first round a bit later on. I'd maybe argue that CeeDee Lamb and Golden are a bit similar in play styles. I think if I'm the Cowboys, I'm looking for a different type of receiver. That's why I went for Tet there instead of Matthew Golden.
I do agree that I think Tet is the better receiver, but as this is being a predictive mock, sort of trying to work out what teams will do, started reading through various sort of Cowboys insiders and team reporters, and everything I could find was saying that the Cowboys front office values Matthew Golden as a better prospect than Tetairoa McMillan. So I thought, try to be predictive, got to pick a player that might not get picked in most mocks, might be able to pick me up a few extra points on YouTube.
And I think the other one that stands out to me is probably the Colts going guard. I mean, they do need to upgrade the offensive line. They do need to keep whoever's playing QB from this season upright because they're going to have a big battle this year as to who's going to be the QB1. But you look at that tight end room that they've got, and with Loveland on the board there, it is a huge pass to leave the tight end room the way it is.
It is.
I think Loveland's going higher than we think.
They lost Will Fries, who was an outstanding guard for them last year. I think
Yeah.
The issues they had at quarterback play last year, they haven't necessarily resolved them. I think the best thing you can do to try and improve quarterback play, we've mentioned it before in a couple of the picks, is improve the offensive line. I think if they need both a starting tight end and a starting guard, they're more likely to get a tight end in round 2 than they are to get a guard, maybe, depending on where the picks are and how the board falls. But I think, personally, Gray Zabel is a fantastic guy to replace Will Fries at that guard position.
He's a great guard, there's no doubt about that. I think for me, number 18, Jahade Barron, it's like Pete Carroll never left Seattle. He is a Seattle type cornerback.
He's not.
The old.
This is a pick that I have an issue with.
Okay.
Because as much as I love Jahade Barron, I think from what I can tell, reading certain things, most teams in the league have him as a nickelback. Some people think he will have issues playing on the outside. Seahawks definitely don't need a nickel. Unless you're really wanting to kind of bump Devon Witherspoon outside or Jahade Barron outside, I just have an issue with that pick when there are bigger needs there, personally.
Well, the way
I think
I
guard
had
is the screaming one.
Yes, I do agree that guard
Just
would be
O-line in
his
general.
pick.
Yeah.
But I think the way that the picks had gone, I didn't feel that there was a strong offensive lineman that I felt comfortable taking at pick
Which
18.
I get.
And
I get that.
If they do see Witherspoon as a nickel, they need a second boundary corner. Or if they see Witherspoon as being able to move back out to outside, they do need a nickel. I feel like the flexibility of Barron, he gives you the choice of being able to do either or. You can switch them around and see which works best.
I don't hate it. Like I said, I just don't agree with it.
That's fair.
And I don't see them going that direction. Tech to Arizona, I like. I think you're just boosting the firepower there. Again, the team that really needs trenches on both sides of the ball.
They do,
especially
but
on
it's
the
a strong
interior
trench
D-line
class.
with the Cardinals.
It
is a strong
D-line
trench class.
It is.
An element of it is BPA, really. I can't see.
And I really like
McMillan going further than 16, really.
No, I can't either. I'm a really, really, really big fan of Will Johnson to the Miami Dolphins. Jalen Ramsey's probably getting traded.
It wouldn't shock me if the draft night trade.
It will be, I think. The Dolphins have said that they are looking for trade partners. Jalen Ramsey has said that he wants out of Miami, but I really like that. Will Johnson's going to be fantastic wherever he goes. And again, trenches are lacking for Miami, but without Jalen Ramsey, that DB room, who is it? Like, it's ridiculous. Kelvin Banks to the Bengals as well. Good pick. Big fan of that because he gives you versatility to play interior, at guard or left tackle. I think he can do both.
Well, I mentioned during Lockwood's that I think up to pick 22 he did pretty good. That's because picks 19 through 22 we picked the same 4 players to the same 4 teams. Jahad Campbell to the Bucks, I mentioned already. Amarian Hampton to the Broncos, Jackson Dart to the Steelers, and Kenneth Grant to the Chargers. For the same reasons we talked about before, they all feel like safe picks. They all feel like team fits, both as at position and as sort of character from what we can tell. So I'm fairly happy with them. If you didn't like my Seahawks suggestion of them not taking an offensive lineman at 18, it's all right. You only need to wait 2 more picks. At pick 23, I have the Packers trading out of the first as the New York Giants trade back in to take my 4th QB, Jalen Milroe. At pick 24, I have the Vikings realizing they need more picks, so they're trading out, and the Seahawks are using some of their many day 2 picks to trade back into the first and take Donovan Jackson. The Texans take Josh Simmons. The Chiefs trade up with the Rams to take Walter Nolan.
Nice.
The Ravens take Mike Green. And then Shamar Stewart, I mentioned you had him falling out the first. I've got him going to the Lions at pick 28. So 3 trades in those next few picks. Gets a bit exciting towards the back end of the first, I thought.
I do like the Shamar Stewart pick. I think, as we were talking about that scale, he is the complete opposite end of, big, powerful edge threat, but it's just that lack of production at college that just scares me a little bit. You know, we're talking about production with players, looking at traits of production for
My
some
brother,
picks.
you took Mike Kell at 10.
I know, I did. I know. I'm doing that more as a predictive because I know what Dennis Allen does. You know my disdain for that man. I know exactly what he does on how he tries to build a defense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a big fan of the Shamar pick. I think it's a great pick there. Mike Green, I think, is a great pick. If he's fallen to the Ravens are just a very good team for him to go to. They need the pass rush there. Walter Nolan to the Chiefs, again, really, really like it. Everyone thinks they're going to go O-line. Their pass rush and their interior D-line definitely need some help as well. So again, big fan. Josh Simmons to the Houston. Feels like almost consensus at this point that if he gets to Houston, Houston will take him. And then let's discuss the two trades at 23 and 24. Like the Jalen Milroe trade for him going to the Giants. He doesn't necessarily have to start straight away, which I enjoy. And the Seahawks taking Donovan Jackson, who I think is probably in my top 3 interior offensive linemen in this class. I think he's a really good pick. I think ultimately he gives you that versatility of he played left tackle for a lot of this season, but he played guard for a lot of the season before that. So it's one of those where it's like you can just slot him anywhere on the O-line and expect some production out of him.
Yeah, he's going to find a
big
home
fan.
somewhere in that Seattle offensive line.
They need versatility and they need someone who can just plug a gap, get your best 5-0 lineman out there. And I think, he's the man to do that. And they've built up enough assets with the trading that they've done in free agency to be able to move around, late day 1, early day 2. I do like that trade as well.
Well, so far you've both mostly liked what I've done. A couple of issues, 1 or 2 picks, but nothing too offensive. I suspect my last
I really hate what's coming up. I expect
my last 4 are really gonna, stir it up a little bit. So at 29, we have the Washington Commanders taking wide receiver Luther Burden III. At pick 30, the Buffalo Bills take Derek Harmon. 31, as a result of the trade with the Chiefs, the LA Rams are now going to be taking linebacker Carson Schweschinger. And at 32, the Eagles take my favourite safety, Nick Imanware.
There's only one that I don't like there, and it's the fact that you've seen that the Commanders have traded for Deebo Samuel and just gone, yes, we need another one.
Duplicate him.
No, I get it. I get why you've done it. I think, I think Washington don't go receiver in round 1. I get why you've done it because Burden's upside is so high, but I don't see it happening. Derek Harmon, I hate that for the as being a Patriots fan, but I love it for the Bills. Carson Schwessinger, I think he is going to be a first-round pick. Teams are apparently so ridiculously high on him that they could see it happening, and the Rams need another linebacker. So I see it.
Another 4 linebackers.
And Nicky Imanware, I get why you've done it. I do. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of picking him in the first round. You talk about Joe Lockwood's talked about traitsy guys. This is the traitsy guy in this draft.
He is. Athletic freak.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
And they need a strong safety. They need a strong safety, and he can play a strong safety. So I like it. I think they might do it, but if I'm the Eagles, I'm looking towards either the interior D-line or the edge, personally.
Yeah, when it got to the Eagles pick, it was going to be a defensive player. Once you get to pick 32, so much has happened already that you don't know what's going to happen next. Yeah. It just became
roll them dice.
It's a roll of the dice. I'm just going to pick my favourite player who's left. It was.
No, I get it.
If we're being honest, pick 32 was a pick from the heart, not the head, and I don't care.
And I do like your draft, Kyle. I think it's a bit more realistic than Joe's. if I'm being
Wait.
completely honest.
Get in.
Purely because, Joe, I don't see Michael being a top 10 talent. I'm going to hold that against you, even on draft night. But it's time for the final mock draft, and it's time for the winners mock draft. We've all gone for the same first three. I'll just repeat them. Cam Ward to the Titans, Travis Hunter to the Browns, Abdul Carter to the Giants. However, there has been a trade. I mentioned this last week. The Chicago Bears have traded up with the New England Patriots for
Just before
Ashton
you
Genty.
explain, can I just point out to the listener here, all day long, I'm going to peel back the curtains here, all day long, Joe's been going on about how Will Campbell is the likely pick. It's going to be Will Campbell at 4, it feels settled. And then we turn up tonight and he goes, lads, I've done a trade. He's just like baited us all day just to make us pick the wrong player now.
I have said this earlier. I've not necessarily said this all day. However, and I'm just going to explain it a little bit before I jump into the others. Apparently, there are a lot of teams that want to get in front of the Raiders for Ashton Genty. I've been looking, and I'm seeing a lot of rumours. The main team is the Bears. Their biggest lack of position on offense is their running back. Would it take an awful lot to move up? I don't really think so, because I think New England just want what they can get for that pick if the first three are gone. So that's what I've gone for. New England have said, Mike Vrabel has said, listen, we're open to trade away. And it will all make sense in a moment. Number 5, I've gone for the consensus pick of Mason Graham to the Jags. I think it's just a given at this point. I think they have a terrible interior defensive line, and I just think he boosts that defense. Because Genty is then gone, I've gone for the Raiders, taking Armand Membu. I've then gone Tyler Warren to the Jets at 7. The Panthers have gone Jalen Walker at 8. 9. Shadur's going to the Saints again, boys. It's going to happen. And then finally 10, the New England Patriots, the team that has just traded. They're taking Will Campbell. The player that they took 4 will fall to 10 if they don't take him at 4. Am I biased? Yes, I am. Do I think the New England Patriots are going to try and trade out of the 4th spot? Yes. Do I think that the Bears are going to try and trade up in front of the Raiders? Yes, I do, because they've got the capital there to do so. For me, I think it makes sense. Jump in, boys.
Right, let's dissect. First of all, you said the Jags, it's basically a lock at this point. The Jags is the first pick that we've all three disagreed on. Can't be that much.
I just think I get taking Tyler Warren, for example. I get taking Jalen Walker. Ultimately, you've already got a player at those positions that you're comfortable. You know, Brenton Strange has played this past season and got quite a lot of reps. You've got 2 really good pass rushers for the Jags. I think if you're looking to boost those trenches, they've made moves on the offense. They need that interior D-line.
I get it. There's a reason that it's the most popular pick.
Yeah.
I just think that it's being made too much of that it's a done deal. I don't think it's a done deal at this point.
I don't think it is either, and I've misspoken when I said that, but I think he is the consensus to go at 5.
I have 2
I think it's the most likely.
Yeah, it could be the most likely, but I think that pick is a lot more open than people suspect it to be.
Yes.
I have 2 big issues with your top 10. First of all, we'll talk with a personal issue. I personally Jalen Walker scares me. He could be fantastic. He's either going to be the best player from this draft class, or he won't see his rookie deal with the team that takes him. And I'm scared that it'll be us. I don't.
I've gone predictive, and I think it is going to be you that takes.
I get it. I just hope we trade back or someone else takes them first. My actual issue is with your offensive lineman. I agree that if Genty's gone, or in mind Genty wasn't gone, I agree Raiders take offensive line. I think they take best offensive line available in this situation with Will Campbell on the board, I think they take Will Campbell, really. I think you then take Membu at 10.
And then if we're arguing about Raiders taking Will Campbell, I think if Membu makes it out of 6, I think that the Jets are all over that. I think the Jets jump at the chance to get the right tackle of the future and just
You're making hypothetical situations.
We
here.
are.
You're slandering my draft on hypothetical situations that I've not picked.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with them taking Tyler Warren if Membu isn't there. He feels a position of need for the Jets, but I think the Jets are out to fill that right tackle spot this draft.
Good. And your team is taking Shedeur Sanders.
Yes, we are.
Enjoy
I
that.
love that we all have different opinions on Shedeur Sanders, yet we've all just picked him at 9 to the Saints. It's great.
It just seems to be the way everything's trending.
And I'll move on. I'll go now picks 11 to 20. Kelvin Banks to the San Francisco 49ers. I said they need to rebuild from the trenches. This time they've chosen to rebuild from the offensive line because I think right now it could be the weaker one out of the two. Plus, with the depth of D-line, you can get D-line there, I think. I've then gone for the same pick as Joe, 12. Cowboys taking Ted McMillan, purely on the basis that he's a true X-receiver. He'll pair well with CeeDee Lamb. I'm not going to call him a safe pick because I don't think he is a safe pick. But with all the scrutiny the Cowboys have come under recently, kind of with, them just not being a very good team, I think they take a flashy pick, a top 5, 6 talent for me. And I think they just go Tet. Then I've gone similar to Kyle. 13, I've got the Dolphins taking Will Johnson out of Michigan. 14, I've gone Indy taking Corson Loveland. 15, Mike Green to the Falcons. I've then gone Jahdae Barron. 16 to the Cardinals. 17, Walter Nolan to the Bengals. 18, I've gone Gray Zabel going to the Seahawks. 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are taking Jahad Campbell. And then I'll round it off on 20. The Broncos are taking Amari and Hampton. Discuss.
I think compared to our draft,
picks 19 and 20 with all three quite late on in the first.
Yeah,
all three ended up taking the same players. We just know that those teams aren't taking those players, though, are they?
Oh, we're
no,
all
they're just not, are they?
No, we're all not going to get points.
Hampton's falling out the first, and Campbell's going to go at 6 to the Raiders, no doubt now.
I like the Kelvin Banks pick. That's the one for me. I really do like that pick. I think
it's that San Fran offense as well.
Yeah, that offensive line is shaky. Is really shaky going into this year, and I think it makes sense to start injecting youth into it this year. So I think for me, that is a very good pick for him. I'm just disappointed he's not fallen to the Dolphins because I think if he does get to the Dolphins, that's another one that they're all over. I think regardless of the needs at cornerback, I think their line is equally as if not more shaky.
It's worse, 100%.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people are forgetting to realise is that Kelvin Banks Jr. was the best offensive tackle in college football this past season. It wouldn't shock me if the San Francisco 49ers had picked 9, 8, they would be taking Kelvin Banks Jr. I know a lot of people have him falling kind of to the back end of the first round. I think there's going to be this run on tackles early on because there's so few of them in this draft.
I think it's a trend with the draft as well. It's that these offensive linemen, there seems to be a run on them in the early mid, the late mid first round, where they all just seem to go off the board really quickly. I think we saw it last year. We've seen it the year before, where teams.
It's so hard to get a good one now.
Yeah, exactly. Teams want to take these dart throws on these big offensive tackles to try and shore up their offensive linemen and nail them down for the next 10 years. So, I completely can see why he's going there at 11. I think the Bengals pick for me as well. It's the Bengals pick. It's throw a dart at a defensive position, because if the majority, if not all of these picks aren't defense, then they are.
I disagree with you. Throw a dart at a defensive player. I think throw a dart at a trench player.
I think it's any defensive player.
The Walter Nolan to Cincinnati pick you've got. The reason being, I think it's either got to be offensive line, protect your $1 billion offense at this point, or it's got to be a more splashy player, a more sexy pick than a defensive tackle. Defensive tackle in the first round is the most un-Bengals thing they can do. Doesn't mean it's a bad pick. I understand why you've done it. It just feels like a not Bengals thing to do, really.
And this is the thing, and I think this is why I've kind of done it, is that they've gone so Bengals this off-season. The most Bengals they could Bengal, in that they need to kind of balance out the Bengal scale, and they need to go a bit un-Bengal to balance out the two Bengal, and they're going to be equal.
Normal NFL team.
They're just going to...
NFL team or bungle.
And we've said this, their run defense this past season, I believe, was horrid. I don't have the exact stats, but just watching those games, their defense was a rough watch. Walter Nolan immediately gives you help at rushing the passer from the interior. He's a bigger body. Arguably, for me, he has a lower floor than Mason Graham. For me, he has a higher ceiling than Mason Graham does. I think Walter Nolan could be, you look back in 4 years' time, I think he could be one of the best players in this draft class. Okay, number 21, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Jalen Milroe. I'll get onto that in a minute. I then have the Chargers, taking Kenneth Grant. Again, a pick that we've all made, I think.
3 of us have done that.
The Green Bay Packers, they're not breaking the curse. They're taking Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. We've then got another trade. The Vikings are trading back out of the first round and out of fear because Milroe has now gone. The Browns have thought, I'm not letting the Giants jump up and take him before us. So they've made a trade. The Browns are taking Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, which looking back on it, since I've done this, I'm not a big fan of that actual pick. But, we're sticking with it. That's going to be my prediction. We've then got Josh Simmons going to the Texans. And finally, the Rams are taking a cornerback. He's sneaking into the first round because of the pure talent that he's got. It's Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. So tell me, guys, before I kind of get onto my final ones there, what are we thinking for those?
Benjamin Morrison, I don't think he's sneaking in. I mean, I couldn't find a place for him in my mock. I think as long as that injury report comes back even remotely clean,
I think he's
a lock for the first round.
Yeah,
I've heard
a lot of NFL
closer to the top
teams
of this cornerback class than he is tier 2, providing he's healthy.
Yeah,
I remember at the start of the season. At the start of the season, I had them as cornerback 1A and 1B with Will Johnson and Benjamin Morrison.
Yeah.
Benjamin Morrison just looks like a great corner. He plays like a great corner when he's not injured. The hip injury is what's caused him to fall. The Rams need more help in that defense. Why not?
I think should Morrison fall out of the first round, I think he's that player, that everyone's vying for pick number 33 on day 2.
People are trading up for him.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's that player that, as soon as the clock starts on day 2, someone's going to have made a trade up for him.
And then before we get to your 2 QB picks, we'll talk about the Packers pick. Shamar Stewart to the Packers. That is bread and butter.
The most Packers pick.
Yeah. Packers are going to.
Which is why I think they're going to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, Packers fans are going to expect it and hate it. Not because he's a bad player, just because it's not what they want. They want something else, and it's never going to happen.
They want that round 1 receiver, but it's not happening.
They do.
No. They won't do it.
Your QBs. We'll start with the trade. I think you are correct. Once a third quarterback goes, if it's before that Vikings pick, I think the Vikings very quickly start getting phone calls from New York and phone calls from Cleveland, and it basically becomes a bidding war between those two teams scrambling to get the last QB who could potentially start for you at some point this season. Yep. This isn't a knock against the rest of the class. I think if the rest of the class are going to start at any point, they need to sit for a year or 2 first. The 4 guys that we've talked about so far today, they're the ones that I think at some point this year could start a game and not look out of depth. So I think, particularly if Jackson Dart is QB4, as long as the Browns haven't massively overpaid, I think they're happy with that. Does feel slightly Jameis Winston-y, but I think the Browns don't care, considering what their other options are at the moment. Talking of
No.
options and lack of,
Yep.
your Jalen Milroe to the Steelers. I like Jalen Milroe, but I think of the 4 QBs who could go round 1,
He's the least likely to start.
he's the one who's least likely to start week 1. And of the 4 teams, with the exception of maybe the Titans, I think the Steelers are the ones who, if they don't sign the ayahuasca master, are going to need a QB to start week 1.
They are.
It wouldn't shock me, and I'll just interject quickly. It would not shock me if we saw Aaron Rodgers signing a contract day of the draft. It's Aaron Rodgers is all about me. Let's try and make the conversation all about me. What better day to go and steal the thunder of the NFL draft than to
The
sign
thing
a
is,
contract?
he's not. You know what though? He's not doing it the day of the draft. He's not doing it the day of round 1. He's doing it the day after, because he's essentially doing what the Packers did to him, in the fact that he just signed a new contract and they were like, Jordan Love's here. No, the Steelers are going to draft Jalen Milroe mainly because of his athleticism. I think, it's a tricky one because I really debated Jackson Dart there. I just couldn't see Jackson Dart being a Steeler. I don't know what it was. And I think the fact that obviously there's a lot of contention between, at least we've had these conversations. Is Jackson Dart QB2? Is he QB3? I've got him at kind of 3, I think, kind of going into it now. However, I know you have him at 2. But ultimately, it was a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, that the NFL announced which players were going to be there in the grey room on draft night. And Jalen Milroe is on that list. Ultimately, they've got some receivers that can kind of bail out the QB as well. It's a good O-line, a good defense that can bail out the offense if the offense is failing. If I'm the Steelers and I'm taking a chance on Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe, I'm taking a chance on Milroe there purely from the athletic upside. I'll move on to my final ones, just as we're kind of eating into time. Baltimore are taking Donovan Ezaraku at 27. The Lions are taking Michael Williams at 28. The Washington Commanders are taking Malachi Starks at 29. The Bills are taking Derek Harmon at 30. The Chiefs are taking Tyler Booker at 31. And I have James Pierce Jr., edge number 3 for me. And I think edge number 3 for Kyle as well. Falling to the Eagles to replace Josh Sweat. How he does it again, as Joe Lockwood likes to say.
It's the blueprint.
He seems to do it every year, though. This is how it seems to go.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Williams at 28, not sure he'll be there. Might go at 10, The Harmon pick, I love that pick. It's a good fit.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I really do.
And as we said before, Ravens are going to be happy with whichever of the premium edge players inevitably falls. And if none of the premium edge players fall, there's going to be a good player at another position. I think the Ravens are sneakily quite happy with this draft class working in their favour. The James Pierce Jr. pick, again, he's my third edge, and whenever I do these mocks, I don't know why. I can't get him into the first round before pick 28 at the earliest. Despite the fact he's my edge.
There are the character concerns
it's
there
not
with
even
him.
the character concerns. It's every team. It's like, well, is he a fit? I mean, he is, but such and such is a better fit. And I don't know why I can't find the right fit for him. And he usually ends up going to somewhere as BPA rather than because it's like a.
That's what he is here. That's what he is here.
I mean, that's what
BPA.
The Eagles are taking the best defensive player available.
Yeah. I think with this draft,
mock form, I would.
I think with this draft, it is a lot of as well. Teams are drafting for need more than based on the best player available. I think based on how this draft is in terms of where its strengths are, that there is more of an onus on right. Let's fill needs instead of we're going
Because
to
there
pass
aren't
on.
a lot of blue chip players.
Yeah,
Because there aren't a lot of blue chip players, and you're drafting a lot. All these are going to be starters.
But there's
So you
no
kind
one...
of need to draft for need at that point. And then the other kind of different one, I went for Malachi Starks going to Washington, obviously, purely on BPA. Really, I think that secondary needs help no matter what. And I had Malachi kind of just floating about, and I wanted to find a space for him in round 1 because he is such a difficult player to find a spot for in round 1.
There's a lot of smoke as well about Washington wanting a DB, wanting to draft a DB early. I think for me, Malachi Starks is just a very good, smart football player. He's the best football player there. So why not address that need, that wanted need at secondary, and take Malachi Starks? I do like that fit.
Yeah, they could use 1, maybe 2 safeties, and then could possibly even use a cornerback as well, depending on whether you see Sinistro as a nickel or a boundary guy, or someone who shouldn't be starting at all.
The hate campaign never dies.
It's never going to stop.
But yeah, that's all 3 mock drafts done. How confident are we feeling, guys?
Well, I think it's between 2 of us.
Yeah.
I was feeling confident coming into this, but I've been beaten down. So
the thing is that I hate beating you down like that. I really do. But it was more the fact that you kind of had a go at Kyle for picking a traitsy guy late in round 1, whilst picking the traitsiest player of traitsy guys at 10.
I think I was driven by my hatred of Dennis Allen. I can't lie. I think
you really were, because you even swore at me as well.
You did. I'm going to have to cut that out or mute it or something.
I don't like that man.
It's going to be an interesting one, and it's
I'm
going to
excited.
be one that, like I said at the start of the video, we're all going to be together for. So expect to see a couple of clips on TikTok and Instagram. The plan is to kind of record, some of the picks there, get some reactions, especially for our 3 teams being the Patriots, the Panthers, and the Shadow Saints. Sorry, the New Orleans Saints. And yeah, we're going to have fun. We will then kind of recap everything next week. And we'll decide on kind of a prize and a punishment for whoever comes first and last. I really think, I don't know about you guys, I really think we could have all got this horrendously wrong.
Thank you for everyone watching. Obviously, we will be having a follow-up to this. As we've said, we'll be having a winner and a loser. I'll get my dunce hat ready. But from there, we will be posting all the reactions, obviously, on the socials. So please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff. We'll have them all posted. And Kyle and Joe will laugh at me a lot when the Saints take Shadur and I'm sat there crying.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. See you all next week. Goodbye.
See you later.
Maybe.
Personally,
I
at
think it's
least.
just a case of how much Bengal could the Bengals Bengal if the Bengals could Bengal. I practiced that in my head. Can you tell?
I can tell.
That was well.
Anyone have any other comments?